I wanted to talk about a specific game that I just beat 2 days ago. The game came out less than a week ago and I already platinumed it. That is Astro Bot. Astro Bot, to me, I'm not gonna lie, it is essentially my game of the year contender. My number one pick. I haven't played anything else this whole year that even reaches or even steps on the heels of what Astro Bot really kind of achieved. It's visual fidelity, it's level design. It's a true back to roots gaming experience. It is an incredible game. I loved it. I enjoyed every single moment except for two levels. Those extra levels, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but there's some extra levels within every single solar system, I guess you can call it. Boy, I almost bit my controller, but I won't talk about that. But again, let me go straight into my review impressions of this game. I platinum it, so I kind of know what I'm talking about at this point. So the 3D platforming in this game just feels extremely smooth. It's so fun. It's so well thought out. There's not a single instance where the platforming or the level design feels unfair. It's both challenging and fun. And I think that has to do with the great level design. The team behind this game just created an amazing experience. You can tell they got a lot of inspiration from games like Super Mario Galaxy, and in essence just any 3D Mario game. 3D Mario games have some really good level design, and there's some exceptions, of course, Mario Sunshine, but besides that, it is still an incredibly well designed game. I am just like, in some instances, every time I was playing through a level, I was like, this is a masterpiece. This is a beautiful game, and not just beautiful, but it's very well thought out. Just very well thought out. Really enjoyed it. And I think one of the also biggest attributes to this game and its level design is just how much it allows the player to explore. It rewards the player to explore. It gives you things to find here and there. You gotta find Astro Bots in every single level. There's a certain amount for every single level, and finding them is basically like 60% of the fun behind the level. Of course, the platforming and all that, but just keeping an eye out, keeping an ear out for those Astro Bots is so much fun. Also, the puzzle pieces, and some of them are really challenging to find. I did have to use a guide for a couple of them because of how well hidden they were, and it's amazing. And again, when I found them, I didn't feel cheated. I didn't feel it was unfair, because all the answers were there for me to take and just kind of like puzzle solve in essence. It's just probably me not being curious enough. Just, I'm getting older, my brain doesn't work the way it did when I was a kid, so a lot of these secrets, they were in plain sight, and I just never made the connection. And it doesn't have to do with the design of those puzzles. It has nothing to do with that. It was essentially all my fault. So yeah, level design is incredible, fun. Nothing's challenging that feels too challenging or unfair because of the controls, because the controls are so good. They're so responsive. They're so easy to handle. The character is so easy to handle. Anytime you do die in this game, it has to do 100% with your fault and you not doing what's needed to be done correctly. So no points taken in that sense at all. Man, the details. Now this is when I go more into the graphic side of things. The details in the levels, the details in the environments are just so crisp, so perfect. The collectibles, you can collect these little models, which are essentially just the actual Astro Bots, and their animations, and just the animations are so well done. They just look so smooth, so nice, and every single Astro Bot is a callback to a Sony franchise, Sony IP, and it's just so fun. It is a celebration of everything that Sony has ever done, and you can tell there's a lot of love put into this game. It is immaculate. You got Nathan Drake, you got Lara Croft, you got Kratos, you got like anything from the more popular mainstream IPs, characters as well, to the most cult classic and more obscure characters and games that if you're not a big Sony fan like I am, like I'm not the biggest Sony fan at all. There's a lot of history in that game. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't know about certain games that I didn't know, and it made me research those games. So, in essence, this game is not just a celebration of Sony's past games and past experiences, but also it's a great way for newer fans such as myself to become bigger Sony fans, and I think that the team behind Astro Bot did Sony such a huge service, man. Sony has been doing not that great, with the cancellation of games like Concord, and the announcement of the PS5 Pro, which we'll talk later in the podcast. They really owe a lot to this team. They just kicked it out of the park. They really, really, I commend them entirely. They did God's work for Sony. They need to be getting raises. The developers need to be getting bonuses, because oh my god, man, this game made me a bigger Sony fan, and that's crazy. That's crazy for me to say as a huge Nintendo fan, but whatever. As far as the tutorial and just how hands-offy this game is, it definitely doesn't hold your hand that much. It doesn't really explain a lot. It just throws you into the game. It just kind of expects that the player already knows how a 3D platformer works, and the basics of it, the fundamentals, and it just kind of throws you out there. And I think that's the best way. I think they took some notes from previous games in this I want to say genre, and they kind of really implemented really well. I really condemn for the way that they design the tutorial areas or the tutorial levels. If you do find yourself, getting a new ability and you don't know how it works, if you just wait long enough, a little window will pop up and it'll tell you exactly what buttons you got to press, and then it'll show you what those buttons and that ability does. So I guess in that sense, it's a little, very explanatory and kind of hands, holding your hands, but at the same time, it's not going to explain the puzzle to you. It's not going to explain the full extent as to what you can do with that ability. Like, a lot of these abilities not only just help you traverse the world, but they also help you defeat enemies. So you kind of sort of just figure that out on your own the more you play using those abilities. So Sony really did, the developers really did a great job at allowing the player to explore that part of the gameplay. They explained as little as they could, and then they just kind of let you up to your own devices, and I really do appreciate that. The more I can explore on my own, the more I can figure out on my own, even though I just said that a lot of the puzzles and a lot of the hidden Astro Bots were really difficult for me to find. Just that feeling of accomplishment, it is just unmatched. It's just something that it cannot be explained. And when when designers, when developers make it so the player figures out that on their own, it makes the game 10 times better, in my opinion. But that's just me. That's just the way I am. The abilities, even though they're only a handful, they all serve a purpose. None of them feel too gimmicky. None of them feel like, the levels are designed around the abilities. So there is a reason for those abilities. They don't necessarily just give them to you and they kind of just expect you to like cheat the game or whatever. No, they all serve a purpose. And they're very reminiscent. They were very reminiscent of Super Mario Sunshine. When you get all the different types of nozzles, that reminded me a lot what these abilities are for. And it just kind of like put a smile on my face, specifically with the rocket one, the chicken that launches you up into the sky. That was one of my favorite ones to kind of explore a lot of the levels in Super Mario Sunshine back in the day. So that kind of like brought me back to that frame of mind, just how fun it is to explore some of these levels and kind of like get a different perspective of the level, and just, basking into like, wow, the developers really put a lot of work into this world. It's just amazing. And I just don't know. It's just a really, really nice looking game. Like, I just cannot talk enough about the details, man. It's amazing. One of the few things I did not like were the enemies. A lot of them felt too repetitive. Like, they would use the blobs, they would use the electric ones, they would use some of the more basic enemies way too often. They relied a little bit too much on them. But again, it's not a big deal. It is a little repetitive after a while, but it never felt like it was monotonous. It never felt boring. You know, it was more so like, oh, these enemies again. Okay, whatever. You know, just the basic enemy diversity in that sense was just lacking a little bit. And again, every other one was the same kind of a basic enemy, but you know, with themed costumes. Like if you were in a water level, they all kind of had like floaty devices. They kind of had a swimsuit on, you know, that sort of stuff, which I do appreciate. Like it kind of stirs things up a bit, but fundamentally they are the same enemies with the same attacks, so, or the same, I want to say, like weaknesses and strengths and whatever. But yeah, that's all in it. You know, probably my least favorite thing about the whole game, and it's not really that big of a deal. And last but not least is the music, man. The music is just so fun, so good. Like you can tell in all aspects of this game how much love was poured into the creation of this game. Everything from level design, graphics, like the costume design, just the references, the Easter eggs. It's just a very well thought out game. And I don't think this game would have been possible or this successful, this really well thought out, if the developers hadn't put so much love into it. And it's essentially a love letter to what made a lot of people fall in love with, you know, in terms of Sony. You know, the goofy characters, you know, the 3D platforming with like Crash Bandicoot and you know, the exploration from like Lara Croft, Uncharted. Just a lot of love went into this game, and it is essentially a love letter to Sony and everything that Sony has brought to the table and to the world of gaming. So I really want to give a shout out to the developers. They just really kicked it out of the park. Like I all I can say to you right here right now, go play this game. It is an incredible game. You are not gonna want to put down the controller. It is so fun. It is short enough. I mean, I platinum it in like 15 hours or so, so it's still like lengthy enough for a 3D platformer for it to not overstay its welcome. So again, it's just an incredible game. Like there's not much I can tell you besides what an incredible game. This game made me want to explore more franchises from Sony. It made me want to replay a lot of the games like Ratchet and Clank, Uncharted. It made me want to get back into a lot of the classic Sony PlayStation games, God of War, like all those things. Just it's more than anything an advertisement, a love letter to Sony, and I really do hope that Sony sees and appreciates just the amount of work and the love and just the ideas that were put towards this game, because that's essentially what people have wanted from Sony. At least, well, again, people, me, I want more goofy games. I want more 3D platforming. I want Spyro. I want Crash Bandicoot. I want those types of games. Single player, serious, dark, narrative games are fine and all, but it just kind of felt that over the past 10 or so years, Sony has been putting out nothing but those types of games. I kind of lost a lot of interest in PlayStation. So, in essence, to me, this was the perfect game. I love 3D platformers, one of my favorite genres, next to action adventure games. So, yeah, just go buy the game. Honestly, just go buy. Stop watching this video and go and play this game. Honestly, Astro Bot, 10 out of 10, game of the year for me.